What's going on, everybody? You made it to the Daily AI Show live. We're here. We're ready to go. We got a lot of awesome topics to talk about today. And I would love to kind of dive in. So the topic for today is, we talked about this a little bit, but I thought it would be interesting to go back in with the group here. You know, ChatGPT sort of burst onto the scene, if you will, in late 2022. And it was all everybody was talking about, ChatGPT, and so much so that it's almost like become synonymous with, I think, a lot of these other tools. Almost like you would say back in the day, I'm dating myself, but I'm going to go Xerox something. That's really probably dating myself, but I'm going to go carbon copy something. But I thought it would be interesting today to get, since we have a variety of different industries on here, everything from marketing and real estate for a lot of you guys. Andy, what you've been doing with your consulting with AI. Robert, what you're doing with franchises. Beth, what you know about Salesforce and being an expert in that field. Jumi, and all the consulting you've been doing. And of course, I've been mainly focusing on sales. So we have a couple options here, but we can go outside of these too. But I thought, okay, we have ChatGPT, obviously. Yes, there is the paid side of that. So maybe we can dip on that a little bit, but that really starts to get into plugins. And I think it makes it maybe a little bit of an unfair fight at that point. But we have the OpenAI playground. We have Claude. We have Pi, which maybe that's worth a discussion in this particular topic. Then we have Bing Chat. And am I missing any others that you guys feel like?
Well, let's be clear. When you say unfair fight, you don't bring a knife to a knife fight, right? You bring a gun. So it's not OpenAI's fault that they're just better, and they have plugins. And so, I mean, it's an unfair playing field right now. There's going to be an unfair comparison. But I think the conversation is still valid. When do you leave that platform? What actually, more importantly, what does it not have? And where does it not do as well as some others? And I think that's the question. So
even pushing back on that, I will say, and this is just to push back a little bit on that, Robert. Even with I have ChatGPT Plus, so I have all the plugins, I have all that stuff. I will still go to Claude for some things over ChatGPT. So maybe that's sort of what we're talking about. So even though I paid $20, I'll still use Claude in some instances over that. For one, I'll give a really quick use case for this. I've talked about this before, but I'll make it really brief. I had a client and he was like, I need all the copy from all my LinkedIn posts that I had been working with him now for over 2 years. In 3 hours time, I took 250 posts for him, scraped it through Bardeen, had somebody help me with that. Bardeen is a scraping tool. It took all the content. I was able to ingest it into Claude. Not only did I come out with an outline for a book for him, then I wrote the first 5 chapters in summary for him. And then just for fun, I threw it into 11 Labs and cloned his voice and sent it back to him and said, here's you reading the book that you didn't know you have over 250 LinkedIn posts that you asked me for this morning. That's Claude to me. And he was like,
that's
whoa.
All right. Shocking wow factor.
All right. So
surprise and delight. Surprise and delight.
But I will say that that's only a temporary benefit, because I think the context window will be continually getting better with GPT-4. And if those of you who didn't see my post on 2 men enter, 1 man leaves, it was a reference to Thunderdome, a lovely Mad Max movie, Who Run Bartertown. I could go on and on with quotes, but the point of that post was that there is a website that basically pits the models against each other, side by side, blindly, and you get to vote for which one does better. I was like, that's pretty cool, and I'll post it in the show notes for those who want to try it. So
anyway. I have a question: who's using Bing Chat right now? Is anybody using that, and why?
All right, why?
I didn't mean that. And why would you? I meant and why? Because I use it. I do.
I use Bing for very specific circumstances, usually when I want something to go out and find current news or current instructions. I find Bing is actually a little better at diving into the deep instruction. Like I'd have to go through 5 different searches on somebody's website. And it's less wrong than the other tools for me. And if you can get me 80% of the way there, I'm usually pretty happy.
How does that compare to some of the web-enabled plugins on the Chat GPT side? Have you done that comparison? like I use a fair amount of Web Pilot to grab anything that's new on the internet. So I don't particularly like Bing, but that's just probably a personal bias. I don't want to have to sign up for a Microsoft account just to be able to use it, but that's a whole nother thing. But so have you tried or compared the two before and see which one works better for you for navigating that new information or that information directly from the internet?
I've tried it a little bit. I think part of it is that my use case is generally I'm interacting with Bing on my phone, right? So I'm pulling it up.
Oh, you're
I'm
the
having
one.
a conversation.
Okay, cool.
And so I'm not interrupting what I'm doing on my desktop or laptop or something. And that's just a preference. And I started doing that before GPT had its iOS app and you could talk to it. So habits now.
I'll give you my Bing experience briefly. When it first was announced, it was very annoying. I mean, they made you go download Edge, and it was so frustrating. And then when I got there and I started using it for the first few days, it was kind of cool. Then they put this huge limit. You can only ask it 5 questions. And I was like, you know what? You just guys are so annoying. That's why Google's beating you, because you suck at user interface and experience. I was just mad, So I just vowed not to use it again. But Bard, which is equally bad, it's just terrible. So I did some great things because I wanted to use Bard to be able to scan websites and get real-time data. The whole 7 September whatever cutoff was killing me for certain tasks. So I tried it, and it was something simple like, evaluate this company's website and give me the Google reviews, put in a matrix and say, that give me the most common negative reviews and common positive reviews in a matrix, right? And I did it 3 times with 3 completely different answers, and it was just like, so does this fall under hallucinations when it can't reproduce the same output? I don't know, but it was not reliable enough for me to present to the client. So I was like, never mind.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my experience with web-based Google Bard.
So Bard got better a couple weeks ago, right? Like there was a big upgrade. It's still a matter of less wrong, but and Bing now you can ask 30 questions. You can have 30. The limit is no longer 5.
Okay.
Well, I think that's the caveat, right? Is everything is everything's it's going to be better. It'll be a little better in a couple of weeks. Just give it a couple of weeks, it'll be a little better. And so going back to what you were saying, like Robert, like for right now, that any particular chatbot's going to have an advantage. I think for Bard, it's just going to be like it's made by Google.
Well, I mean, whenever DeepMind comes up with their Gemini product, then I think the whole conversation is going to change. But going back to Ethan Molnick's main point from Macon, or one of his main points was, this is the worst models you'll ever see.
Right.
So like everything's gonna be fixed. Every concern you're having, every policy, everything that's just worrying you, I'll get it worked out. It'll work itself out. And yeah.
I actually said something similar in a AI video I did recently. I was talking, some people are a bit nervous about the idea of using AI to create video of themselves. And I said, consider it. Today is the worst it will ever be for the rest of your life.
Yep.
Only going to get better. I don't really have a sign up for Bard. I've practically never used it. Wasn't wowed with it. Bing, haven't used it much. I mostly still use Chat GPT. Can't get to the other ones in Australia because they don't have access yet. So, I mean, my use case is mostly content creation, and I actually use other tools independently of things like GPT for some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Just to clarify,
does anybody use Cohere? Sorry, Beth, go ahead.
No, just to clarify quick, there's no sign up for Bard. You just go bard.google.com.
Right. Yeah, exactly. What about Cohere? Anybody use Cohere? Tried it?
What's that?
I've never heard of it.
Oh, well, it's a I think based actually in Toronto, they're kind of targeting more enterprise use cases. They want to go after companies as opposed to individual plebeians and their use cases. But
Right.
I think you can actually play around with their playground, very similar playground. I'm actually a fan of AI 21 Labs. I think they're out of Israel, and they have a product called WordTune. I think I mentioned it before on this cast, but I was playing around with it. What's the beauty of it is, of course, you can write for you and it can summarize for you. But as you're writing in a document, you can select some text. You make an assumption. You make a like say, craft beer sales have skyrocketed in the last 10 years. And you say, give me a stat for that. It'll highlight that, and it'll ask for a stat, and it'll go out on the internet and find a specific resource to back up that claim if it can, right? Or you can rewrite it, or once you've done that, and you can say, continue writing this paragraph, and it'll just continue the thought process. I'm like, this is such a cool tool. I'm not sure why nobody's talking about it. But
Well, they are now. I'm going to check it out.
So
Say the name again.
It's WordTune is the product. I think you actually go to wordtune.com, and I can actually post that in the show notes as well. But AI 21 Labs is the company that I think the parent company of that.
And it is wordtune.com. As I just
go.
pulled it up here on the side here. So I want to, those are two that I'm going to go here and WordTune. I'm going to check out both of those. That's awesome. Because I always love seeing like what's coming down the pike. I think, we talked about Pi last week, but it was sort of in our dress rehearsal. So it's not a show to go live. We'll definitely circle back to it. But I wanted to circle back really quick to Bard, and then I also want to circle back to Bing Chat, because I think it's important. I just want to share with people how I'm currently using them, and I hear what you guys are saying, and Beth, you make me laugh with it's a matter of being less wrong, because I think that's the way you have to approach all of this. But I am using the tools daily, and I am in the sales consulting world, so I talk to lots and lots of clients. I talk to a lot of SDRs and AEs, SVPs of sales, those kind of people, and do trainings with them and stuff. And it does come up now. Bard maybe not as much, but I wanted to bring up how I think the difference is. So I'm going to just share my screen real quick. Share screen. There we go. So I just threw in a quick example. And here's the thing. I actually think Bard is awesome, especially in this generative AI experimental that they have, which I know they're releasing to more people. And Matt Wolf actually talked about this on Future Tools the other day, and on his, I love his YouTube channel. And he was talking about, like, I don't know, is this helpful? Is this not helpful? And I kind of felt like he was looking at it the wrong way. He was expecting it to be somehow replacing of, maybe a Chat GPT or whatever. I actually find this to be pretty cool. It's almost like a best of both worlds to me, because what it does is it produces this answer at the top. So I just said, help me understand DTG versus DTF for t-shirt printing, because it was something I was doing last weekend with my daughter, and we had these exact same questions. And I think this is actually pretty cool the way they do this. You can also switch the view to be like this, or you can come back again. You can come over here to look at some of the options. And if I wanted to, I could get into a conversation about it and ask follow questions like, what's better? And then I can just continue to do it. And then when I'm done, it's very intuitive to me to back out. And if that isn't doing it for me, well, then I just have regular Google and everything else that I would want in a normal search. I happen to have a plugin for Merlin. That's why you're seeing this pop up as well. Merlin is just a GPT-4 plugin, so it's helpful sometimes. It's not always right, that's for sure. But anyway, I just wanted to pull this up as just sort of a kind of a kickback. It's not doing high level stuff. And I think there's a good argument for, is it really just a different way to do search? And I kind of go, well, yeah, but is that bad necessarily?
Let me jump on that really hard and fast, because there's a lot of stuff on this that can potentially be bad. So you're picking a very specific use case here.
Sure.
So that right there is okay. So basically, this is nothing new. Google's doing nothing new here. They're trying to they're repackaging, and they're putting a skin on it for what they're already were doing, which is what's the time in Lisbon, Australia, wherever that town is,
sure.
Or what's the time in New York City right now? It would give it to you right there, answer. Or so there is already started with the answers of certain things, right? So the generative experience here that you're seeing, what makes me really scared, right? There's the answer. Boom. No search results that you care about. But what's crazy is that people that are in this industry, which WSI is very embedded in helping small business owners and medium-sized business owners get on the top page of Google. Now it's not just the top page or the first 10 links. Now you got to argue about this whole SGE window. How do I get in there? Let me just tell you, we did a beta test with one of our franchise owners, and we said, here's one of our clients. Let's Google it and see what happens. Wasn't in the SGE. All of her competitors were, and she was mad. Like, these guys are terrible. Why are they even on here? Why did they pick these four? And then she was on the first page of Google. Okay, so the idea that it's only the good, organically highly ranked ones are going to be in SGE is an invalid statement, because then we just did another client of hers that showed up inside the FGE and wasn't on the first page of Google. So what does that mean? So now it's like, what are they doing with this algorithm to put these clients in that first page? And also, just so you know, obviously this is killing a lot of people that would have answered your question, Brian, with the content website that would draw traffic for them to be sold something like t-shirt printing material.
Oh yeah, no, I fully agree.
So it's like, oh my gosh, how do we? It makes me mad is I cannot find anybody to answer the question of what is Google's. How do we optimize for SE? Nobody can tell me that. It's so frustrating.
I can throw something in the pot about that, because I actually shared something in the Slack group earlier today. So there's a content marketing guy who's kind of like he's the guy who kind of inspired me to really go down that path. A guy by the name of Marcus Sheridan. He's got a book in Amazon Success and blah, blah, blah. So he posted something in LinkedIn today and I shared it to the group. Basically, he said, I got a lead today that came from Chat GPT. Somebody who went looking for something to do with content marketing. They didn't look at the Google search results. He showed up in ChatGPT's write-up as a well-known person in this space. And this lady contacted him and said, let's talk. He's an expensive guy. You're not going to get him for $500. It's probably $50,000 to hire him or to do something. So the point he made, which I thought was really interesting, was that if you're going to take advantage of these AI tools for marketing, and I can totally see where you're coming from, Robert, in that, this whole SEO thing is suddenly potentially going to get a bullet to the head. You're going to have to start building a brand and getting a lot of content out there in all sorts of different places so that you show up in these search, these LLMs like Chat GPT, etc. That may be the new SEO, possibly.
Right.
I can't read the crystal ball, but
yeah, they say Google doesn't comb social, so we can't say that being more social, like on Facebook, on your social media channels, is going to help you as a business. But I've heard that also, Aaron, from other people who first-party content or just producing more content is going to make you more recognizable. But right now, how do you do that is still a gray area.
And here's what I'll just start. I know this week sort of went off topic for what we were talking about today. And when is Chat GPT? Maybe the consensus of the six of us is that, well, it's going to be Chat GPT plus, right? But we'll come back to that in a second. I just think on just sort of the SEO side, what I see is exactly what you're saying, Robert, which would be super frustrating if I was in anything to deal with SEO at this point. I would be like banging my head against the wall because it has the potential to disrupt big businesses that have built and, put people out of jobs and things like that. Because what I even think is coming is where that top section on Google doesn't even just, like, we know now it'll say, here's the starting point of a 10-minute video on YouTube where your question starts to be answered. Here's where I really think this is going. If we just kind of like go beyond this, I think it's going to give me a feed that's 10 seconds of this guy and 30 seconds of that girl and whatever. And it's going to say, here's your question. And we have brought together 15 seconds of 10 or 15 different YouTube videos that we've scraped and we know where it is. And it's going to show that to me in one feed. What does that do to content creators? If it's like, well, I'm getting my answer, but I don't need to know who you are to get it. It's just like, and so maybe this is a great topic for next week for to dive into the SEO side.
Disruptive. Yeah.
Yeah. I you know what? And maybe that's the perfect thing is like to leave this for its own conversation. Cause I think
Yep.
I would love to hear you dive more. You and Aaron and Robert both. I'd love to hear you guys like really dive into this. I wanted to pull up because I said I would. Let me just show really
Before
quick.
we do that, I want to say, going back to the original topic, we didn't talk about open source models in Llama 2 and Beluga 2. And I think I'm curious if any of you have actually done the process it takes to get that model actually to a chat interface, because that's usable.
And free and potentially safer, would you say? Would you say that there's...
I wouldn't say it's safer, but I say it's less stupid rules. So it might be more accurate. It might be less problematic. Yeah.
Well, if I'm running it wholly on my system, what are the data privacy implications? I'm asking because I don't know. Like if I run Llama 2 wholly on my system,
if it's a local installation, that's your little ecosystem, right?
Okay.
So you don't have to worry about those kind of questions, data privacy, anything like that. What you do have to worry about, and this is probably a limitation for most people, is it's not the easiest thing, and it takes a lot of resources.
You have to have the right processors, or that's why you can use Hugging Face, and you can rent server time to actually do it. But then it's on their servers and still not. And then you also got to ask the question: is it commercially licensed? Because if you're going to use it for personal purposes, it doesn't matter. If you use it for a company, it does. So there's that kind of
I think the benefit you pointed out, Robert, of not having the guardrails is really great for research purposes, and just trying to work out your own thoughts and ideas, and that's probably a big advantage for having it as a local resource for you, is just so that you have your own little playground and you don't have to mess with anything else.
Oddly enough, today I ran across a post was an article written about NVIDIA. So if you don't know who they are, NVIDIA make graphics cards. They're like the king of the castle when it comes to graphics cards. And NVIDIA's high-end graphics cards are what drives most AI processing in the world. So they're practically mega billion-dollar company nowadays. But they were saying that NVIDIA is currently working on releasing their own AI workshop, I think they called it, which you would be able to install on your own computer. You're going to need a decent graphics card, and I mean the top of the line NVIDIA at the moment is an RTX 4090. They're pretty expensive. They're in the couple of $1,000 range. I suspect most people won't have the crunching bandwidth of their graphics card to do a good job, at which case you have to start, as Jinmi said, you have to start plugging into external sources, and then suddenly that's where there are the risks. So it's a real interesting subject.
To clarify, though, you don't need a high-end GPU to run your own local installation.
No.
Yeah, it's just going to run way better. Yeah, but I just want to make sure the audience knows that's like, you can start small, and there are different sizes of models too. Yeah. So, and I think the current rate for how much memory or RAM you need is like 1 gig per gig of what the model is. So like a 7 gig model, you're going to need like 7 gigs of RAM or 8 gigs of RAM to run that.
I can tell people a really easy hack for figuring out, if you were to go down that route, if anybody's watching this and be like, well, what would I even replace my 3-year-old computer with? I have always found that if you come in, if it's for cost effectiveness, I'm not saying, if you have $3,000, go for it. But if you're for cost effective, like a lot of people like me, I typically will try to come in right at the bottom of wherever a gamer computer is. The minute it switches over to be calling a gamer PC, even though I don't play any PC games or anything like that, you will find that the processing, the NVIDIAs are at a level where it's going to be able to do most of this stuff. For instance, right now I'm running NVIDIA's echo removal on my mic live right now, and there's 0 latency. And that's running live on my computer, and there's no issue with it whatsoever. That's because I have a computer that doesn't even hiccup at small things like that, and probably could handle a little bit of, local, LLMs like you're talking about, Jinmi. And, we're talking about this computer was probably brand new 2 years ago, was like under 1,000. So less than a MacBook. It's a PC. I mean, definitely less than a MacBook. You can have something that's not going to hiccup, is going to do live video, that's going to give you 1080p, all the things that we're using right now without an issue,
So what we've been talking about right now is using an open source large language model on your local machine. I want to shift back to an idea about how you might use multiple models in a chain of prompts like LangChain, LangFlow, and or there's other tools out there that basically act as a switcher in a workflow, which would potentially take advantage of using multiple models, either for cost. So, even switching within the OpenAI platform between ChatGPT 4 and ChatGPT 3.5, dramatically reducing the cost of the tokens delivered in there. But also, you might find that, in the middle of a process, a workflow, a classification call might work better by going out to Claude or to some other one. And you might even get some advantages in terms of latency by parallelizing those calls in the workflow so that you're hitting different models, but in order not to serialize the calls that you're making to OpenAI.
That's a brilliant point you make. And unfortunately, it is quite technical for most people to kind of implement. But I love the idea of doing function calls within OpenAI or doing agents, as you're kind of referring to, within a workflow, either Zapier or Make, that you can or LangChain, which is LangChain is one of the best out there. They're really good about teaching you how to do it, integrating systems. And so, but I think that's going to be more the norm than not right now. I think it's a little bit more complicated for most people, but I think as it gets more normalized, I think agents are the way it's going to be going eventually.
Yeah, let me just jump in to say, I don't do that. I find it much easier just to stay within OpenAI at this point in time because of the richness of the plugin environment and now Code Interpreter, which does an amazing range of things on top of what a normal conversation is with ChatGPT 3.5, for example. So I'm kind of bounded by my own technical lack of skill to working within that system, but it's really, really a capable system at OpenAI.
And sort of what we're talking about is we're like building with Legos, and then we have our Hot Wheels thing, and then we have like model train, right? Like you can have things go scattershot.
Yeah, I think, look, the other thing we're kind of saying on this call, and truthfully, just sort of like, let's go fourth wall here a little bit. One of the things we have, I don't say struggled with, we've certainly discussed on for us, and where do we want this show to go, is like, where do you come in for the audience? What does the audience want back from us? Would they like us to talk about LangChain, the LangFlow, which we all probably find very, very interesting? Or are people going, you know what? I really need the easiest like user experience, a la I need to build a website. I'm going to use Wix. And so my buddy who builds and has built websites for years and years and years, like literally crawls up in a ball and falls on the ground if somebody uses Wix. He's like, oh, I couldn't, because I get it from his standpoint. Like, why would you do that? And the end user goes, because I can drag it and drop it right here and I'm done. That's why. And so I think that's where Google is going to come in this with Bard, bringing it all back around, because they're going to be crazy, easy, stupid to use. And I don't mean stupid in a bad way. I just mean it's going to be keep it simple, stupid. And they're probably going to come in. Maybe that's exactly where they want to be, because they're like, people use Google products. All we have to do is give them a really great user experience. And they're going to go, to Beth's point, well, it's not awful. It's all right. It's comparable for what I needed to do. And then there's going to be other people who are saying like, no, I need enterprise solutions. I need this to be on a local system. I need it to be calling to multiple different language models, which, by the way, Andy, I think is probably the future. Now that you bring it up, it's like, yeah, why would we hold ourselves to one language model if we can ping and hit several at once? It's like kind of awesome. I never thought about that.
Well, the interesting question is, what are those large language model companies doing to try to hook you in so that you don't want to or can't easily move to another model? I don't know what the answer is to that, but they're working on it. I'll guarantee you that.
Oh, sure. Stickiness, right? They're trying to make sure you don't have a reason to leave. And I think that's where Google will always have, they may be late to the game. Bard may not be as good, but they also probably don't have to be. And then you have Apple, right? Apple has been the people like, oh, Apple's building stuff. Apple's building. They probably are. And
open source is ruining that moat. Open source is going to make that moat non-existent. I think they're going to. Yeah, they're going to have so many people out there programming in open source, and that it's going to be every company is going to have their own language model tuned to their own specific industry. Banks are doing it now. Medical is doing it now. Bloomberg had their own model, but that's a whole other story. But I think that honestly is the future. Every entity, and you're going to have specialist LLMs that you'll do function calls to, Andy. You'll have agents that'll go out, ask a banking question over here and ask a real estate question over here, and then put them together for whatever output you're trying. That's the future.
I buy that vision. I agree with that.
And that's Salesforce models. That's what Salesforce is providing and banking on too.
One thing I will say about Google, regardless of everything else, you can be sure that their number one priority is how do we stop losing money from ad sales? Because the whole LLM in the top of the search results is not only causing problems for SEO people and content creators, but it's definitely causing potential problems for advertising. And so they're going to be working the best way they can. They're probably happy to get rid of the organic stuff so that they can just charge everyone money to go everywhere. But I think that's going to be an interesting situation. So, and before we go, guys, just a quick shout out. We got a couple of comments from Gihan and Nowshad. I hope I pronounced your name right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate the comments.
Yeah, somebody from UAE watching this.
Yeah, I totally forgot to put some of these on here. Yeah, we have a couple on. It's like I know Game.
I like how Brian picked the one.
Wow,
Brian.
I'm only picking the ones that have my names on them, guys. So sorry. Where does it say Brian is the coolest on this team? Somebody said something about Rob. I don't want to put that on there.
No, whatever.
Listen, I know we're over time on this one, and I forgot about the comments. Thank you for doing the shout outs on that, Aaron. So I think a couple real quick things here. Number one, obviously, we don't all agree on, I'm pushing. I'm like, yeah, I use Bing Chat, and other people are like, yeah, no thanks, or Bard, or whatever. And I think that's kind of where everybody is. You have to find your use case that works for you. And obviously, as you've seen, it totally depends on what you needed to do. Are you building towards enterprise, or are you just starting as an SDR and going, hey, I'd like to be able to help with, resourcing and prospecting a little bit easier. How can I do that? In which case, some of these tools where they currently are perfectly fine. Hey, tomorrow, and I got a banner for this, we're continuing to stay fancy here. Here we go. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking all about Code Interpreter. We're all super excited to talk about this. What is Code Interpreter? How to use it? What are some of the greatest use cases we've seen so far using it? So that's coming up tomorrow. And I just wanted to put some quick plugins as well. Obviously, you guys can find this on LinkedIn Live, which is probably where you're finding this now. Please go look like the Daily AI Show page, because we're trying to grow to a point where we can go ahead and stream directly to that page. And we're about halfway there. We need 150 likes. That would be super helpful. We're now also streaming live to YouTube, and you can find all our episodes there as well. And as of last night, you can now also find our episodes as podcasts with video on Spotify. So we're landing and expanding and continuing on.
But what about TikTok? Why aren't we on TikTok Live?
But we need to.
This format be weird in a small screen, though. I guess we have to figure that out.
All right. That's it from. We're over by a little bit, so I'm going to let it go. That's it for everybody signing out. All right, back to banners here. Here we go. Back to brand.
Cheers.
Back to the Splash channel. A little bit of music.
Got to get better music.